So, let's begin Half a Life.
Counselor Lwaxana Troi, personal log, stardate 44805.3. My mother is on board.
Well, luckily I prepared for this eventuality and installed this ejector seat. Ah, damn it. How the hell am I supposed to get the cat down from there? Alright, well, after latching like a remora onto Picard, Lwaxana asks about what's happened with their new guest. Seems that an alien from a planet that's rather reclusive is coming aboard to help with a vital scientific mission for his people, but that makes this a delicate situation. Naturally, Lwaxana is convinced that this calls for her unique skills and comes for the official welcome of Dr. Timizin. This gives us another visit from David Ogden Stiers. I suppose next we're going to wind up with Pocahontas and MASH. This naturally leads us to...
Well, it seems that Mrs. Troi is our acting ambassador of goodwill for today.
Lwaxana greeting a reclusive species is like replacing your N95 mask with a Batman cowl. After the titles, Picard explains the reason for this is to help Tinizin's efforts to give new life to their dying son. This has been his life's work, actually, to help save their world, so he's pretty determined to see this through, even if it means the awkwardness of accepting help from outsiders. In desperate times, you have to put your trust in others.
What does that little one do, Mr. Wolf?
Please, madam. That is a torpedo launch initiator, and it's...
Although there are obvious exceptions. The minute Timizin arrives, she is back on his arm again, prattling away, while Deanna is annoyed and Riker is bemused. He's thinking how nice it is to see that cannon she calls a mouth being pointed in some other direction. They finally get her to piss off so they can get back to the important matter of running this ship and trying to help out an experiment that could save a world.
Enough is enough. Rescue is at hand. Dr. Timizin. Would you clear all this mess off the table, please?
But on the other hand, we could have a picnic. Come on, picnic or averting the apocalypse. Show of hands.
It is true that the intellectual efficiency of high-order beings does diminish proportionately with the deprivation of nutritious fuel.
Well, that's all wrong because your face. All right, pass me a PBJ. I'm old school. Timizin, though, seems to be... Well, I think enjoying overstates it because he seems somewhat sedate, but he approves of her attention. Turns out that he's a widower, and so back on the market. He explains that evacuating their world is just unthinkable for them. Their people are defined by their planet. Although he doesn't say they're siblings because he's a scientist and not a teenage girl. Well, she is clearly infatuated with him and discusses the possibilities with Deanna, although the only obstacle to their relationship is that she can't read his mind, which is ironic considering for most men that's the obstacle for their relationships. But it's time for the science stuff, and Worf assures the captain there are no life forms in the solar system, no other ships around, they could break this thing if they want to and nobody will complain. They fire off a volley of torpedoes as part of the experiment. I think every experiment is better when the materials list includes warhead. Things start out well. I'm guessing everybody's reacting positively to all the numbers that are being reported, and the star changes from red to orange. But alas, things aren't settling down. Eventually, they need to haul ass to avoid the nova. Considering the circumstances, Timizin really takes this with grace. He immediately expresses his gratitude to Picard for helping with the experiment. He's there to make up for all the aliens who come aboard in these circumstances and blame the Enterprise crew for bumbling it up, usually after being insufferable through the entire first act. Oh, and on that topic, Lwaxana comes by in 10 forward. She at least has the good sense not to tell him to just stop worrying about his life's work being a failure. Although her fishing for compliments and then explaining that she's fishing for compliments are right back in her wheelhouse. I'm half surprised she didn't open the conversation with, apart from these clothes, I'm completely naked.
I'm sorry, I'm not helping him.
That's the first time she's ever said that as an observation and not a declaration. But while it's hard for him to cope with this failure, he still wants her to stay. He clearly enjoys her company, and I suppose law of averages says that somebody out there must. Half a Life is late season 4, significant because First Contact, the episode, not the movie, had come out not too long before this did. Now, the reason that's significant is because First Contact showed that the focus didn't have to be on the Enterprise crew the entire time, allowing Half-Life to take the next step and allow a story about a recurring character and a guest character. You obviously don't want to do this every week, but the flexibility of exploring something like this that would be more difficult with a regular cast, well, it's a good thing. There's no way, for instance, that we could have reached this point with Picard and a woman who's Timmison's age this early into the story. To have reached that point in their relationship, they would probably, well, let's be frank, it's Picard. I would honestly be surprised if he figured it out by Act 4. And for anyone else, it just wouldn't be credible. I mean, 30 years older, it's not like there's any kind of a reputation that it could be based upon. It's truly got little more than an opportunity in such a short time frame for it to be physical. And not to be a dick about it, but, well, you don't need me to state the obvious. And he has to be at this age because it's very relevant to the plot line. Because you see, he explains to Lwaxana that he is going home to die. And no, it's not because they're really, really strict about failure. Picard, Riker, and Data call up Timmison's people to explain what happened and how they're looking things over. But they say not to worry. They'll pick a replacement for Timmison and give a call to the Federation when they're finally ready to try to save their civilization once again. Meanwhile, the ambassador of goodwill comes by.
Are you aware these people you are so graciously helping are murderers?
Guess the ambassador of goodwill is gone and we're going to have to settle for the minister of sucket. She explains that Timmison's people have a tradition that at age 60, which is called the resolution, you commit ritual suicide. I was quite confused a long time ago when I read a review of this about it being about euthanasia, because I don't see it at all, and it surprises me so many people are repeating that view because I don't get it. It's not like there's any kind of an allegory here that's working for me. Timmison isn't even sick or in any kind of pain. He's turning 60. Where does the allegory come in here? There's no comparison there. I mean, he's not dying. He's not sick. He's not in pain. I don't get it. Or was this just something that people debated once upon a time? Hi there, you're listening to the Harv Tannis Show. We've been talking about Social Security and the fact that it is completely out of control. It's going to be bankrupt soon and probably takes the country with it. But if we just committed suicide at age 60, problem goes away, doesn't it? Oh, but you should have heard our callers this morning, people. The same old whining answers from the same old softies. Oh, Harv, I love my parents, though. Oh, Harv, I'm afraid of death. Oh, Harv, I think it's wrong to make people disembowel themselves. Well, we'll see where you people will all be when the deficit is out of control and the dollar is trading even worse against the euro. Lwaxana demands that Picard stop Timmison from going home, but Picard says that no matter what his feelings might be on this subject, he doesn't have the authority to do that. Besides the fact that Timmison is not a criminal and could do what he likes, Picard cannot try to interfere because of the old PD. Attempting to convince their society to alter itself is not the job of Starfleet. We are not all-powerful gods, damn it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to figure out why I accidentally blew up a star today. Well, she decides to make Chief O'Brien's life a living hell. So he's happy to see Deanna arrive, which makes him the minority today. She makes clear O'Brien cannot beam Lwaxana down, and he gets the hint and locks the controls before taking a break. She apologizes to Deanna for getting so upset, weeping over the fact that she's met someone only to learn that they're going to die pointlessly.
I mean, he's not ill. He hasn't had a tragic accident. He's just going to die. And for no good reason. Because his society has decided that he's too old. So they just dispose of him. As though his life no longer had any value or meaning.
Issues around the elderly seems far more relevant than euthanasia to me, because the point isn't specifically choosing to die. It's that he's now considered old, and this is how their society has chosen to deal with that fact.
And believe me, you will never be one of those who dies before they die.
My grandmother passed away at age 90 last month, and I said at the time that it wasn't because of COVID. Except in retrospect, I think it could be argued that it did. She used to visit with her friends or get out and do things using Uber. She really loved that. She couldn't drive herself anymore, so that really helped her feel liberated. In contrast, being locked down for so long, not allowed to mingle with anyone, that's what caused her to die before she died, as Deanna said. There's only so much talking to a screen to substitute for real human interaction before you just can't accept that anymore. At one point, she tried to get an Uber to take her 143 miles to my mother's house because she just couldn't stand to live like that anymore. What do you do in a situation where the body is at extreme risk anywhere except the one place that the mind can't continue to live in? So yeah, it's understandable to fear that dismissing the elderly leads to that first step, the death that comes before actual death. Still, I'm going to share one other thing with you. One of the last things that she ever said to me was that she was very proud of what I was doing here. She was very proud that I was able to raise and support a family doing this. And so, I got to tell you, in her honor, I'm going to keep making jokes about old people. And if you dare dishonor her memory by telling me to stop, well, you're the bad guy here. After a night of passion, and thus it is clear that Timothy isn't dead yet, he explains their rationale. His people were aging past the time that they were still achieving things. They were becoming infirmed and a burden upon those younger than themselves because they had just lived too long. Lwaxana argues that it gets rid of the problem by getting rid of the people, which, if you think about it, is probably not a solution in any real case. I mean, you don't solve the problem of poverty by making poverty a capital offense. I mean, for one thing, who's going to make your shoes?
But it makes no sense. Some of your people could still be active at 70 or 80, and others might be seriously ill at 50.
Oh God, I hope not. I don't want to listen to that doctor gloat. She emphasizes that tradition can change it if someone is brave enough and is willing to show why it needs to change. And given how he is the best hope for their people, who better to make the example? He still seems firm in his position until he realizes the implications of their testing and just how much he can help them develop a new, better module to solve this problem in the 4 or 5 decades that are left. So he decides he's going to forego the resolution and continue his work, and so asks Picard for asylum. Good thing, too, because the minister below is furious with him and sends warships to bring him back so that he can commit voluntary suicide even if they have to kill him. Timothy is outraged at their obsession with tradition to the point that one man not killing himself is more of a threat to them than their dying son. But he decides that if the only way to get these people to use his work, the work that could mean life or death for his world, is to surrender himself, he might have to do it. But before he even has the chance to make a decision, his daughter arrives. Now, just to prepare you, his daughter is played by Michelle Forbes, who, of course, will go on to play Lwaxana in the show. I just thought I'd tell you up front because I don't want her appearance to surprise you in any way, okay?
Dara.
Father.
Good. Like I said, I didn't want you to be at all distracted by her appearance.
Father, come home. This is wrong.
I've already had the hairdresser make the ceremonial bar stool on my head. Are you telling me you don't plan to sit on it? Timothy brings Lwaxana in, and shockingly, she is not diplomatic about this. Finally, it occurs to her that slamming someone's culture to their face might not be the best way to persuade them, so she clams up and lets his daughter speak her piece about how she can't stand the thought of him being forever separated from them by rejecting their ways. With Deanna, Lwaxana admits she might have underestimated how ingrained the resolution is with their society, that she's been getting him to question a central tenet of his people, and she should have expected that there would be this kind of a resistance. So yeah, he says he's going to go down and face the music, and she decides to join him for when he says his goodbye to everyone that he loves, which would include her. She promises she won't cause any trouble. So how long do you think before the war starts? The post-episode follow-up. Annoying character is Michelle Forbes' hair. This is right up there with Picard's dick statue as far as things that they had to know was bad when they filmed it. Final score for Half a Life is 5 out of 10. It is a surprisingly good episode that allows Lwaxana to be herself, but not her grating self, if you will. That's the key. It really showed that it was bad writing that was the problem with the character's mixed reaction with the audience. At least that's how it seems to me. Because even when she was acting with her most self-absorbed or clueless traits on display, it didn't grate as it did previously. David Ogden Stiers gives a great performance. I found it really admirable the way that he captured this sort of a pre-20th century gentleman scientist, if you will. Disciplined and often restrained, but with a passion underneath it all that sometimes would burst to the surface. Half a Life is a good character piece, and thus why it fits in as a typical TNG episode.
All hail